Good afternoon, everyone. Bienvenue tout le monde à cet premier événement de l'Institut sur la science, la société et les politiques publiques de l'Université d'Ottawa. This is our first event of the year. I couldn't be more pleased to have this session taking place today. I'm very excited to hear what our speaker and moderator are going to share with us today. We're going to begin with an Indigenous affirmation for the University of Ottawa. We pay respect to the Algonquin people, who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region, from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future. So I would encourage all of you to acknowledge the land from which you're joining us. I know that now that we're holding these events virtually in the context of COVID, people are often joining us from well beyond the University of Ottawa. So welcome to everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Monica Gattinger. I'm a professor at the University of Ottawa, and I am director of the Institute for Science, Society, and Policy. We are a cross-faculty research institute at the university that explores the links between science, society, and policy, as the name suggests. Just prior to the holidays, we released our strategic plan for the coming 5 years, and our new strategic vision is very ambitious, and it's about helping Canada to transform decision-making for the grand challenges of our time. And for us, that means doing a better job of aligning and bridging science, society, and policy imperatives and bringing together academics with business, with government, with Indigenous organizations, with civil society to address shared problems collaboratively. So I'm very excited about this first Food for Thought session of the year, because it really sits very squarely in that new strategic vision of helping Canada to address grand challenges. And it's focusing in on inclusive approaches to participation in the digital economy. I've been looking forward to this presentation for quite some time. Each year, the Institute hosts a Fulbright scholar from the United States. And we often refer to our Fulbright program. We do not have a catch and release strategy with our Fulbrights. Once we catch them, we don't release them. We try to continue to work with them. And the Fulbright that you're going to be hearing from today, who was with us in 2019, is living proof of that. His name is Professor Lenny Lewis. You'll get a more formal introduction to him in a moment from our moderator for the day. But Lundy was our Fulbright scholar for 2019. And subsequent to his time with us, undertook a project with a number of different researchers and organizations here at the University of Ottawa on inclusive innovation. And we're just so delighted and very pleased to share with you the outcomes of that project today. Our moderator for the day is Professor Rocky Lupacchini, who is a faculty affiliate at the Institute. He is also associate professor in the Department of Communication at the Faculty of Arts. We're really delighted to have Rocky as the moderator, given that his research experiences and interests align very closely with Lundy's work. So Professor Lupacchini is a social scientist and philosopher of technology, and he pursues work at the intersection of communication, technology, ethics, decision-making, and policy. So with that, I will hand things over to Professor Lupacchini, who will be our moderator for the session. And at the close of our session today, our research director, Dr. Marissa Beck, will share with you some news about upcoming events at the Institute that we hope you will join us for. So Rocky, over to you.
Thank you, Monica, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll apologize for being really informal. That's just the way I'm going to roll. I can't believe, Lundy, that it's been 2 to 3 years now. Was that really 2019? I think I had a lapsed memory, because it just seems like you were here yesterday. It really does. Maybe it's the COVID memory. It makes everything go a little. It makes time proceed a little differently. But I will mention a little bit about Lundy, although it's not a very formal introduction. We know that Lundy Lewis has done amazing work. He's a professor and he's a chair of the Department of Computer Information and Tech at Southern New Hampshire University and Chief Technology Officer at Tussey's Corp. He got an MSc in philosophy at Georgia Tech in logic and AI, and really Georgia Tech is a kick butt institute with very few competitors. So honest with that trajectory, you can only expect wonderful things. I'll just mention maybe my first experience with Lundy. He came. I was really delighted that we have the Fulbright program in place with ISSB. They've been really the best institute at U of O for connecting people. It's been wonderful. And I asked Lundy, first of all, to come with a course I was teaching on technology and identity. And that was at a fourth-year undergraduate course, and he was kind enough to bring in a Paro bot and to pass it around, because we were in that lecture, we were dealing with therapeutic technologies, especially ones that were used in nursing homes. And the biggest problem was once you start passing something wonderful around, people don't want to give it up. And I remember watching this student I had, and then she just wouldn't give it up. It was just cuddled into her arm. And it just proved beyond a shadow of a doubt the enticing capacity of technology to win us over and to win our affections. Not only did Lundy come in on my undergraduate class in communications to wow them, but he also offered a coding assignment and came to my PhD seminar for the digital technology and innovation program. It's pretty new. It's been around since 2014. It's a very successful program. We've had a lot of really heavy-hitting, talented students, and they were wonderfully challenged by having Lundy in the classroom, being able to interact with a leader, really a leader in our field. We're looking at social robotics. We're looking at technology integration into not only the classroom, but into different social settings, like into childcare, into care homes. And this is, really a big concern these days, since we have a large aging population, not necessarily people in their 30s and 40s that can mobilize to be there all the time for their parents who might even be overseas. And having this type of robotic technology can really be a savior. He actually reminded me a lot of the earlier work from Sherry Turkle, like really exploring, pushing those boundaries of human-computer interaction and figuring out what the heck do we want to do with robots? What do we not want to do with the robots? And what types of regulations and policy should we put in play to best harness the potential? I think I've said enough. I'm going to turn the floor over at this time, but I'm really delighted and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rocky. Yes, I have wonderful memories of the time we spent together with your students. Some of those students, at least one, I'm still in touch with on a professional basis. That was Nam Rada, if you remember Nam. She's the one that I said, after she talked a little bit, I said, you know what? You should come to the United States and run for president. And we'll never, that was 2018 in the fall. So anyway, I'm so happy to be here. And I'm going to talk about a project, one of several projects that I did during the Fulbright. And this project was funded by the Canadian government. I had the idea for the project during the Fulbright. So I have a few slides here, not a lot. I'm going to share my screen and start those slides. So we know there's nothing new here, but let me tell you the idea that I had during the Fulbright at the University of Ottawa. I've always been interested in vulnerable populations and how to use technology to assist in some way vulnerable populations. And the main project during the Fulbright was to work with kids on the autism spectrum. We did that project. It was a success. But another idea that I had there was this other population, and those were people with cognitive disabilities. And the Canadian government, in particular, the Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada is what it's called, put out a call for proposals for technology to help any vulnerable population participate better in the digital economy. All right, so I had this idea of what I think social robots might be a bit too much at this point in time, but about that time, voice technology was coming out, and I was familiar with it. I was fascinated by it. So the idea was simply having an assistant, a personal assistant, in the form of voice technology. And my original idea was this. I remember when the representative from the government of this institute came to hear about our ideas. I walked in with a prototype around my neck, and it looks something like this. This is an Alexa. This is an Alexa, but it's not tethered. It's just connected by tape to a little portable battery. And the idea was, I was imagining this population wearing it around the neck like a medallion. Because when they do their jobs, they're probably going to be walking around a warehouse. This is what I was thinking. And this, with the proper kind of intelligence, this device could help them perform tasks and do tasks in the correct order and by a certain time and that sort of thing. So we talked about my idea and gave a little demonstration like, Echo, what's in my to-do list?
You have 4 items on your to-do list. To finish up the presentation for the Ottawa talk, feed the dog, wash dishes, and take out the trash.
That was my to-do list about a week ago. So I wrote up a proposal, and lo and behold, it was accepted, and it ran from May the 1st to September the 1st, May the 1st, 2020 to September the 1st, 2021. So we tested out the existing skills. That's what we call the intelligence that you just heard. That's a type of a skill, being able to maintain a to-do list. We looked at off-the-shelf skills and the abilities of Alexa in general, and considered building new skills that might come forth from the target population. So we're interested in the target population, both for establishing requirements, what do you need, and also to do the testing of the prototype. So let me take this off before I trip up. And at the time, and I think it's still the case, there are 3 main voice technologies, and that's Alexa and Google Home and Siri. And I was familiar with all of them. I was really intrigued by Alexa because that's the only one that was programmable. And that's what I like to do. My thing is AI. I like to take off-the-shelf technologies and implant artificial intelligence in those technologies like Alexa to help vulnerable populations. So we'll go to the next slide here. Well, No, let me back up before I do that. So we had 24 participants in this study that belong to our target population, and we call them advisors. We don't call them participants or subjects. We call them advisors, and they were given an Echo Dot, that's the same thing as Alexa, to take home with some general instructions to try it out. And then we interviewed, when I say we, not me, because I'm more of a researcher and a technical person, but the right kind of people at the University of Ottawa would interact with the target population, these 24 advisors, to find out their likes, dislikes, their intentions after a month of use. That is, do they plan to use it further? Would they recommend it to a peer? And any new ideas they had that might help them in the digital economy. So that's the general idea. I do want to do a shout out to the other people involved on this project. Andre Valino, who's in information sciences at U Ottawa. Interesting thing about Andre is that he and I actually go back to the 80s as graduate students. And so it was good to see hook up with Andre some 30, 35 years later. And Virginie Kobiot is the founder of this business. That's what it is, a social enterprise named Open. And Virginie is a psychology professor and a CHIO research investigator. We collaborated with Open because those were the type people who knew the target population very well. So Virginie and Hajir, the next person who worked at Open, recruited the members of the target population and interacted with them through multiple interviews during the month that they used Alexa. And then there, a shout out to Demetrius, who's a professor of electrical engineering and computer science, because he was the ultimate instigator of this project. He got together Virginie and me and told us about this opportunity, this call for proposals. And so I've been working with Demetrius ever since on various projects. And Monica and Catherine at the ISSP sort of managed the relationship between the work and the Canadian government. We should take a look at Open since it was an essential part of this project. Let me bring up the Open website. We look at their stakeholders. They're interested in people with all sorts of, with all cognitive disabilities, their customers, their beneficiaries. And the unique thing about this social enterprise, this business, is that they hire people in the target population. They hire them and pay them an hourly at an hourly rate, I think. So they did all of that work. And so there's lots of interaction between Andre and me, the researchers and technology people, and Open, who dealt directly with the target population. So their services include accessibility testing. We used them for that, and also generation of requirements. So let me go back. We said 24 advisors, and each was interviewed 2, 3, sometimes 4 times until the advisors were comfortable with expressing their likes, dislikes, intentions, and new ideas. So you can imagine a table consisting of 24 rows, and here are examples of transcription of those interviews. let me say a little word about that. I did the English-speaking advisors, and Andre did the French-speaking advisors. So here are two examples, advisor 1 and advisor 2, and we'd listen to the video anywhere from 15 to 25 or 30 minutes and pick up on the important points. So here's some likes, for example. Here's some dislikes of these two advisors, some intentions, and some new ideas. So I won't just read those off, but I will say this, that of these two examples, number 1 is clearly positive, and number 2, advisor 2, is ambivalent. And I transcribed or analyzed both of these videos. So overall, of the 24 advisors, 22 of them were clearly positive, and 2 were ambivalent, and none were clearly negative. Here is one of the advisors, Melanie, and here are some quotes from Melanie. I think she was a French speaking, so Andre analyzed her videos. And there's another article in the U Ottawa Gazette about this project also. And I think it's okay to use this picture because it's already been permitted to use in the other article. These are the observations after reviewing all the videos. The advisors found value in 4 main items here overall: simple question and answering tasks, scheduling tasks such as alarms and reminders. They discovered entertainment tasks. One popular one was, what does Alexa say if you say, will you marry me? And if you ask her that, she'll give various different answers, or play songs by the Beatles. And education-oriented tasks were found valuable to our target population also. How far is it from Toronto to Ottawa? Arithmetic calculations, and so forth. One thing that we weren't going to test, but it came to the fore, was the opinions of the caregivers. With a lot of our target population, the caregiver would be there also. And it turns out, this is really important, they found this device to be useful in their routine support also. For example, providing periodic reminders of routine tasks. And as I had this intuition when I came up with the original idea, they found the dot to be more safe and trustworthy than laptops and tablets and other devices. And they really didn't have any concerns about invasion of privacy or exploitation. So since we got these results, so I do want to tell this little sideline story that I've noticed about Alexa. The back-end intelligence is changing from time to time. And so one thing that annoys people about Alexa now is that if you ask it to perform one of these tasks, it'll do the task, and then it'll come and say something, by the way, blah, blah, blah. And that annoys me. It's not an invasion of privacy or exploitation, but it's just annoying. If you do a Google search on how to turn off the by the ways on Alexa, it turns out you can turn off a lot of them, but not all of them. Some of the new ideas, and that was one category, the likes, the dislikes, the intentions, and the new ideas. Some of the new ideas here, we got several, but one is to provide a mobile, non-tethered dot in the form of a bracelet or necklace. That was interesting because that was my original idea. That's the prototype I pitched to the department, the sponsoring department in the Canadian government. But what I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but what the Alexa that we gave the advisors was the Generation 3 tethered Alexa, which I got here behind me. It's a Generation 3, very cheap. And the original idea also concluded possibly using this Alexa, very small. It's almost like a vanilla wafer, very small, and that's because it doesn't have a speaker. One could easily wear this as a necklace, or I always called it a medallion, around the neck with earbuds like I've got on now, and a small portable battery. But by the time we got to running the experiment, the pandemic had started, and it was easier to ship them directly a Generation 3 Alexa. The one of my prototype is a Generation 2, and it's smaller and lighter than a Generation 3. And it turns out that the Generation 3 is a bit too heavy and bulky to use as a necklace. But it's interesting that many of the advisors came up with that idea. By the way, another constraint, a self-imposed constraint, was the price. The constraint was that we want this technology to be $50 or less, because we suspect the target population or any population wouldn't want to spend like hundreds of dollars on this kind of assistive technology. And I meant to do this. I simply forgot to look up the price of the Alexa in Canada today, because it varies. But I bet it's something like $30, $35. And when I'd say dollars, I was thinking US dollars. So that was one new idea. And another new idea was the attachment of a robot body to Alexa so that it could perform physical tasks. It's interesting that they came up with such an idea. And there was another project I got involved in where we did something like that. In fact, this person I mentioned earlier, Demetrius, invited me to be a co-advisor on implanting Alexa into a robot, a toy that could assist people on the kids on the autism spectrum. It turns out that Demetrius's child is on the autism spectrum, so he was able to provide requirements. And also, I through another project, I was able to provide requirements for this intelligent toy also. It was a little a bear, and the student was worked on this project for his master's thesis in electrical engineering and computer science, and finished up. Because of the pandemic, we weren't able to actually test it in the real world. So, interestingly, we've sort of addressed these two new ideas in other projects. I thought this was interesting too, that neither the type of the cognitive disability or the age, and the advisors had to be between 18 and 64, not kids, neither one of those impacted the use of the dot. The main thing to worry about was the level of the communication skills. And that makes sense since it is a voice technology. it turns out that Alexa is pretty good at learning the nuances of one's particular voice. That's one of the first things that we investigated. How well does Alexa do in learning a particular voice and being able to distinguish between multiple voices? I really wanted to try to do something like this. I wanted to create the intelligence in Alexa such that it would only respond to a particular voice. For example, if this is Rocky, then I'm going to respond to Q&A. Otherwise, I'm not. But it turns out you just can't do that. It seems like you could, but with the Alexa SDK, and that stands for the Skill Development Kit, or sometimes Software Development Kit, wouldn't allow us to do it. But that would be a nice feature to contribute to security and prevention of maluses. There were limitations, and we published this. I was very impressed to find that Alexa can understand and speak not only French, but Canadian French. You can choose Canadian French, but it turns out that Alexa is better at understanding English than Canadian French. So that needs some work for Canada, for example. And let's see, another limitation is that most of the participants didn't take the time to train Alexa to recognize their voices. But for those who did, it worked better for them. And also, Alexa comes off the shelf with quite a number of skills, some developed by engineers at Amazon, but others developed externally, but there's just simply more skills available in English than in French. So conclusions, and then I'll be done. We learned a lot from the project, and I think that we put forth something that would be useful as assistive technology for our target population. It shows the value of in situ, that's Latin for in the field, something like that. It shows the value of in-field user participation in the design and evolution of technology. And one thing that I've always been interested in, and that is collaborating with people in disciplines other than my own. I think it's so important and it's so fun, and it sort of opens my brain up to all sorts of different understandings. So we had several kinds of experts in this project: technology, cognitive disability experts, business experts, because open is a business, and healthcare. One of the things I'm thinking about now is how to, let's see, that's the last point. Let me do that last. One of the things I'm thinking about now is how to disseminate and follow up on the results of the investigation. We've done some of that, and we've published things on the ISSP website and in the Gazette and on the Open website. And Andre and I have a paper in a professional conference on this subject matter. It's an international conference. But the thing I'm thinking about really now is, so it was over September the 1st, and we spent about a month analyzing the data. So now what? How do we know really the impact of this technology? The advisors kept the, that was part of the deal, kept Alexa, so it belongs to them. So are they continuing to use it now? Have they recommended it to anybody else? I think it would be a good idea to say maybe at a 6-month period after September the 1st, which is coming up, and then maybe at a 1-year period after that, to get in touch with his advisors and try to get a handle on those type of questions. Are you still using it? Did you recommend it to anybody else? Would you still recommend it? And see how we're doing. There are really no plans and no funding for that right now, but we might be able to figure out something. So with that, then I'm going to end the talk, and I believe that there are plans for Q&A. In the description of this talk, I think I use language like the audience can brainstorm about the pros and cons of the approach. And we might come up with some new ideas here today that I'll jot down for the future. Who knows, could be the basis for another proposal to the assistive technology program for the Canadian government. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Lundy. I'm the moderator for this session, so I'm supposed to ask some of the panelists to quiz you. And I'm going to start the ball rolling. I really enjoy hearing about this. I've also worked with Andre for a while indirectly, and I'm sorry he wasn't here today. We're doing a cyclical review in DTI, so it's all hands on deck, right? But when you did your and this is a typical student concern, especially in engineering, we're always worried that we're going to start a project, and by the time we get our project done, the technology we want to use is outdated and obsolete. If you were going to either redo the project today or to build on the existing project, would you choose Alexa? Would you continue with intelligent personal assistants, or would you change the intelligent personal assistants, or maybe even switch off to a different type of therapeutic technology for that population? I'm totally curious.
Well, my opinion, or this is what I would do if I were asked to extend it, I would stick with the same platform. I would stick with the Echo Dot, also called Alexa. I don't have any investment or in Amazon, anything. I don't care about that. I just care about the quality of Alexa, and mainly that you can program it. There's no other voice technology that that provides a skill development kit, and I think that's very important. I would love to tackle some of the new ideas that came from our target population. Mm-hmm. And the only change, I mentioned this, the only change in Alexa is some of the off-the-shelf intelligence, like those, by the way, things that Alexa says.
Yes, that would be annoying. That would annoy me after a while. We've turned our Surrey off for many of the same reasons. It can be quite annoying at times. I'll have a part two to that question, and then I'll turn it over to the panelists. When you entered this project, was there a concern about proprietary conflicts? I mean, you mentioned that this is an Amazon product. Was there that type of consideration early on in the project, or would you have done it regardless of whether it was a proprietary or whether it was a not-for-profit type of built-up technology?
Yes. In writing up the proposal, one of the things that I had to do was list some risks and mitigation strategies for each risk. Mm-hmm. Just to show that I had thought about things like that. And one of the risks was, yes, what if Amazon shut down their skill development program? Yeah. Businesses do that. If it's not profitable, they shut it down and you're just left cold. So that's a risk. And the mitigation strategy was, well, let's see if there's anything else in Google Home and Siri to take the place of it. Or maybe there's some open source technology that we could use, public domain technology. I just had to show that I'd thought about it. But fortunately, the skill development program is going and is still strong. Another risk was similar, but what if businesses do this? I mean, it's the nature of business. You can imagine Amazon getting everybody hooked on voice technology for very cheap, $25, $35. And once they're hooked, let's raise the price to $200. What am I going to do if that's the case? So that was something I had to address. And then finally, with this voice technology, there's always been a current concern about privacy. Yeah. Privacy. Some people will think that Alexa or any voice technology is listening to you all the time and recording everything and then analyzing it. And then they're selling information about you to other businesses and that sort of thing. And I had to come up with a mitigation. No, the second part was, what if that became so commonplace that nobody would use it? So it's a waste of time. So what would I do if something like that happened? So yes, I had to think through those kinds of things.
Excellent. When asking a question, I know that the the chat function is disabled for the session, but the Q&A function is what we're going to use to address questions. And I do have like one, I guess the first question that's coming to you from an attendee. The first was a comment, great presentation. The question is, hey, have there been talks with ISED or other organizations about scaling this initiative? Could it get bigger?
No, we haven't had such talks. In fact, I think this particular program, the assistive technology, is getting close to end of life. It was a 5-year program. And I just don't know whether or not it's going to will be extended for another number of years. So the answer is no, there haven't been any talks.
Okay. Well, for anybody that's attending on the panel list, please either raise your hand and address a question directly, and that's fine, it's a small group, or use the Q&A function. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask another question because I'm really curious about this work. When you looked at this population, is there another, I know like whenever you get into context and you're going, oh, I wish I would have maybe considered this technology. When I look at some of the cognitive limitations, especially when it comes to comprehension with this particular community, would there have been would there have been other suitable technologies that you would have seen as being useful in this context that would either, I don't know, improve the impressions of the technology or experience of life or perceived functionality among the users? Are there other types of assistive technologies that you've been looking into, Lundy?
Yes, I'm looking into technologies like social robots, which you know about, and you've mentioned social robots. I'm interested in virtual reality technologies and augmented reality. I'm interested in this technology called brain-computer interface, a device that reads the signals of the outer brain that is beyond the skull and tries to categorize them. I look at these new technologies like that as sort of a toolbox. So I'm familiar enough with them and I've played with them enough to sort of make an educated decision about what tool is good for a particular task for a particular population. So when I think about the population of people with cognitive disabilities, most of those tools require a computer. And if I look at my computer here with all these keys and these little symbols and that sort of thing, it overwhelms everybody. So I was thinking that the voice technology is much, much less overwhelming. So that's another means into practices in the digital economy. Voice technology is that renders the digital tasks more accessible to the target population.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lundy. That actually answered. I actually have a new doctoral student that's looking specifically at this question, and I find this personally helpful as well. So thank you. I do have a question from Margaret McQuaid. Given your recent findings, where do you see the technology and applications possibly going over the next 10 years?
Oh, that's a good question. This is where I see it going. The technology itself is going to become, I would think, and I hope it's going to become more accessible to what I call a person off the street. It's still the case that a lot of these technologies, including the robot I took to your classroom, might as well say they require a computer scientist to be able to get them to do cool stuff. And what I would like is to see some of these technologies be programmed in easier ways other than writing code, programmed to do useful stuff using other methods. In your class, for example, you had the students create new behaviors, innovative behaviors on the robot using visual programming. So that's important, visual programming. It requires logic and connecting boxes together, much like an electrical diagram, but it's much more understandable than all those squiggly marks in Python and Java and that sort of thing. So the more, and a lot of companies are doing this, with our social robot behind me, and Alexa as well. Alexa provides a way to add new intelligence that a person off the street could handle. So more and more, I think companies are going to see that if they make the programming of their technology to perform new behaviors more accessible, that's a good business move. So everybody wins. That's more of that's both a hope and a sort of a somewhat a high degree of confidence that will happen.
Thank you, Lundy. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And it kind of dovetails with the movement in personal computing. If we look at the introduction of the Mosaic interface, the menu system in 1995, and how much more accessible personal computing was for people that didn't have to program. Who cares about Python? Let's just use the menu system. And look at the results now, 25 years later. So that does make a whole lot of sense. I have another question for you. How do you think this technology could enhance global insecurity?
Global insecurity. I don't know what that means. So can we define that?
It's a question from somebody in the room. I'd have to ask them to explain. Oh, here we go. How can the technology compete with future trends in quantum computing?
Oh, oh, that's a hard question. Let's see.
I'm going to not apologize. Those are good technical questions.
Yeah. I've co-authored a paper on quantum computing.
Yeah.
Well, quantum computing, if we can make a quantum computer, it's going to open up all sorts of new applications. In the same way that consider quantum computing alongside optical computing. So if we can make an optical computer, then that would open up a whole range of new applications as well. I'm saying this because in AI in general, a lot of the algorithms back in the 1980s, or in some cases before, were well worked out. But the computers were not powerful enough to run the algorithms in a timely fashion. I think that's in large part why today in 2022 that AI has come back again for the third time, 3 surges so far since the 60s, and that's because the same algorithms that we understood back in the 80s are now such that they can be run quickly on the high-powered computers. But they're not, computers aren't optical yet. I think people have been working on that. Quantum computing plus optical computing will open the doors for a bunch more real-time applications.
Excellent. It's if I was going to add to that, it's like the timing is right, and it's actually helped nurture in really interesting social research. A few of my students are looking at the social accountability and the ethical and unethical application of algorithms. So now that we've got the machines working, we got to figure out how to weed out the undesirable subjective programming aspects of the AI that we've got down, and that's like gives rise to a whole many new areas of research. It's exciting.
Yes, and it's exciting for me because I mentioned earlier that I really like working in other disciplines, and I mean with other disciplines, psychology, sociology, education, and there is you mentioned this human-robot interaction, which involves all those disciplines, and you make a good point. Now, at least we're able to take an assistive technology into the real world at a grammar school or a children's hospital. I did that in Ottawa here in the Fulbright, and actually do some experiments and evaluate the efficacy of certain technologies on a target population.
Yeah, excellent. I do have one more question before I turn the floor over. This was from Nigel Cameron. Do you think it's inevitable that these devices will be generally adopted while consumers don't worry about data privacy and other difficult issues? Or is it, for example, the EU's privacy pushback and the current bipartisan US shift against big tech going to lead to fresh approaches that have much more respect for the consumer?
Well, that's a complex question, and I would have to spend some time thinking about each part of it.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't get the question well enough right now to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Is that question written down anywhere? It's like philosophy. It's like something I've got to study. Now, what is the question really, and before I can answer it?
Maybe we'll just focus on the first part. Do you think it's inevitable that the devices are going to be generally adopted while the consumers don't worry about data privacy or other difficult issues? Is it inevitable? Are we going to be stuck loving it or needing it or not needing it and not loving it?
The only thing I can tell you regarding that question is I belong to the camp that I don't worry about data privacy. I follow these little rules that I make up in my head about being careful regarding my data and data that comes at me from other sources. For example, I love ad blocker. I don't like ads. So I believe that if we come up ways to block things. A big blocking that I do is just filtering out junk email, spam. Yeah. The more people learn how to do these little tricks, then the less they're going to worry about data privacy, and that will open up also more using of technology for people off the street. I hope that makes sense.
It does make a lot of sense. I feel pretty positive about the type of technology that you've been using, Lundy, and how you've applied it. If I have to compare it to, say, I don't know, the money grab of Google Glass and how it failed for Google it was a big flop, right? So people are called glass holes in the urban dictionary because it wasn't used in the right population for the good. It was sort of thrown on to the entire population. So you really couldn't pick out the altruistic use of it. And this is a clearly a good application for a potentially good tool. And it seems to be a very good way to start the ball rolling. So the technology won't be placed in the ballpark of this is an inevitable thing, you're stuck with it, like it or not, but more a question of like, we already did one good thing with it, what other good things can we do with it in other areas to expand on the good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a phrase I use all the time. I want to do stuff that contributes to the social good in some way. And that Google Glass is an interesting story from many different perspectives.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you very much for tackling what are diverse and tough questions. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, panelists and members that attended today. At this point, I'm going to turn the floor over to Marissa Beck, the Research Director for ISSP, for to continue on.
Thank you, Rocky. Hello, everyone. My name is Marissa Beck. I'm the Research Director of the ISSP, and I'm so glad you were able to attend today's webinar. Thank you all for being here. And of course, many thanks to today's speaker, Professor Lenny Lewis, and our excellent moderator, Professor Rocky Lupicini, for today's really important and insightful conversation. I certainly learned a lot. If you would like to go back to this discussion to kind of maybe re-listen or rewatch it, it will be on our on YouTube and the ISSP's channel. So you always have a chance to go back to that. Thank you, Lundy and Rocky. And finally, I would also like to thank the entire ISSP team, and especially my colleague, Brendan Frank, for making this event happen today. Thanks to you all. Also, the next Food for Thought event will take place, as always, on the last Thursday of the month, so on February 24th. And for that event, the Institute for Science, Society, and Policy will host Professor Chelsea Shelley, who's actually the Institute's 2022 Fulbright Research Chair in Science and Society. And she is an Associate Professor of Sociology in the Department of Social Sciences at Michigan Technological University. And Professor Shelley will discuss social aspects of socio-technological systems transitions. Finally, another event that I wanted to draw your attention to, it's an event that the Royal Canadian Institute for Science and the ISSP will be hosting together on Tuesday, February 8th. It's a virtual panel discussion, and the topic is citizen science. And the discussion will look at the impact that citizen science has on science and policy, and the panelists will explore the challenges to be overcome to make citizen science an even more powerful, positive force in society. Please check out the ISSP website to learn more about these upcoming events. And as always, to keep up to date with everything going on at the ISSP, please sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media. We hope to see you all again soon. Take care, thank you, and goodbye.